Welcome to the first episode of the MR2 engine swap series. We are finally going to put more horsepower into the little MR2, and I'm here with my buddy Marc, my new buddy Marc.
I'm Marc. I'm the man behind Frankenstein Motorworks. I've been working on Toyota MR2s since 2008, doing engine swaps. First with the 3.5 liter V6, the 2GR, and now focusing a lot on the 2AR, the 2.5 liter four-cylinder that I think has a ton of potential, particularly for the MR2 Spider. I'm here to turn this 158 horsepower motor into a 240 horsepower motor because that's what this MR2 needs.
Yeah, exactly. This MR2 needs over double factory horsepower. So we're going from 107 horsepower on the dyno in the 1ZZ to whatever we make on the exact same dyno with this 2AR. So this is an engine out of a Toyota Camry. Go and watch the last video where I revealed what engine we were going to put into the car. We're going to take a bunch of cool tricks and Toyota parts and aftermarket parts that Marc has made himself, and we are going to cram a big 2.5 liter into just a little MR2. We are going to get started stripping down this Toyota Camry hybrid engine.
Obviously, this has a whole bunch of hybrid parts that we just need to get rid of. Unfortunately, some of them are actually pretty nice, like that electric water pump. That is junk for this build. I do believe that's a pretty handy part.
Yeah.
Could become handy when people start using these motors for drag racing.
So what is this, like a water pump or something? What is this?
No, so this is an oil air separator. There's drains that are coming down from the head.
Is an oil air separator stock?
Yeah, there's a maze in there to actually, because this is the crankcase going to the intake, the crankcase vent.
I'm so jealous, dude.
Yeah.
My 4G63 would love one of these.
So right in here, these are the balance shafts.
Okay.
And we're going to be taking those out as well as the upper half of that case. Balance shafts. The balance shafts have been removed, but now we have to worry there's oiling coming in here. Normally we would just pound an 8mm ball bearing in here. We don't have one on hand, so we're actually going to put a set screw in there. Now, we are reusing the intake cam, and I brought a second intake cam from the same exact motor. It's not an aftermarket part, it's just two intake cams from this hybrid motor. If you look at these cams, the lobes are just absolutely massive. And the reason for that is this motor operates in what's called simulated Atkinson mode. What that means is the cam has to stay open for a very long time and results in these really fat intake lobes. We're going to advance the intake cam by about 1 tooth, which is 20 degrees on this motor, which will turn it from a high efficiency cam to a high performance cam. And then, of course, this motor has an absolutely tiny exhaust cam. By putting another one of these intake cams there, that's how we're going to solve that. So now it's going to breathe on the exhaust side also. We're also going to follow that up by turning it to dual VVTi. This is the phaser we're going to use on there. This is actually a second intake phaser. This is something nice that this motor does for us. It'll fit 2 intake phasers, and you can't have exhaust VVTi unless you switch to an intake phaser on the exhaust side. It sounds a little bit weird, and it makes the motor a little bit harder to start in cold weather, but for a race car, it's absolutely fantastic. So here we've got the EB60. It's a 6-speed transmission from the 2011 through 2016 Scion TC. And it's pretty simple what we've got to get in there and do. So there's this part that we got to install. It's going to modify the cam in here, and that will give us a detent for first and second. That way it's a lot easier to shift this transmission. A detent is what gives you that shift feel, you know, when the shifter stops kind of on the 3/4 rail. Because this is a 6-speed, the 1/2 rail isn't at the end, so we need to stop there to feel it. Otherwise you just go right to reverse. This part here in the transmission, this cam that we're going to be replacing, this is that part that gives you that center feel that holds it between 3 and 4. You can see this is what you're actually actuating, and this rotates under the ball. And this part here you can see is just adding a groove. This will sit right here for 3 and 4, and right here for 1 and 2. We're going to finish dressing up this motor. So that's going to be the water pump, the alternator, the exhaust manifold, there's an idler pulley, we forgot the crank pulley yesterday, the intake manifold, and then we've got the flywheel, the clutch, then we're going to mate it to the transmission finally.
Is this our first CNC part or whatever?
Yes. Well, and actually, interestingly, that is the first part that was designed for this swap.
What does this do?
So this goes right here. It holds this pulley because there's no way to route the belt without an air conditioner. So this is our air conditioner. The firewall ends up right about here in the MR2 Spider, and the stock outlet goes about basically right into the firewall.
Why didn't this come with an alternator from the factory? Why do we have to supply our own?
The transmission is actually 2 electric motors on this thing, and that can act as the alternator.
Because this came out of a Camry hybrid, I forgot.
Right, yeah. Exactly. These fuel injectors are from the 5th Gen 3S GTE. They flow right around 545 cc. They are exactly the same dimension as the factory ones, so you can use the factory fuel rail. And this is the 2AR motor mount for the MR2 Spider. It reuses the factory isolator. So for the flywheel and clutch, since this is going in a race car, we're going to be using a lightweight ACT flywheel with a pucked ceramic clutch disc and a heavy-duty pressure plate. So the first 2AR that I swapped was actually kind of an accident. I was at the junkyard and I ran across one of these back in 2009, and because that was a brand new motor, it was dirt cheap, and I was racing in the 24 Hours of Lemons and I needed something dirt cheap to put in my Lemons race car. I just went on the assumption that it's a modern motor, it's got to be pretty reliable, and it just year after year after year, I put over 30,000 miles on that first motor. It outlasted, I think it was 5 different chassis. And when it came time to make a swap kit for the MR2 Spider, I decided that it was really the best motor to use, along with the EB60 transmission from the Scion TC.
All right, so we have achieved the big #1 step of mounting the engine and the transmission together. So the engine is basically in hot boy spec now. And now, what do you got there, Mark? What's that?
I got the next 5 hours worth of work right here.
Okay, so
we got to convert this over to, instead of the stock ECU, to use the Haltech ECU.
And in the meantime, I am going to work on something completely different. We are deleting AC. It only had AC because, you know, it came with it from the factory. I need to go and get the Freon extracted out of the system so that we don't cause an environmental hazard. So we threw the MR2 back on the trailer and drove it over here really quick to our local Terry Volkswagen dealership. My buddy Chase hooking us up. They just let us back the MR2 in, and right now we are draining the Freon, extracting it out of the AC system. Super high pressure, and Freon is just bad for everything. Just draining it out right now, and then we can pull all the AC stuff out. Mark is still working on wiring. He's going to be doing that for another couple hours, I think. In the meantime, he's shown me the spots where we need to give the MR2 a little massage. So we're gonna make some clearance in a couple of spots. Ho! Marc is making tons of progress on the wiring harness, and this MR2 is on track to making double factory horsepower very soon. Stay tuned for the next episode when we finally get the motor in the car.